Holy shit! Who's ready to put a bottom end together? I know I am. Let's do this, guys. Welcome back to Saturday's Wrench.
Welcome to Saturday's Wrench.
Yeah. Alright guys, and welcome back to the second installment of this engine rebuild. We're going to start off by cleaning these parts. They were just not up to Jeff's standards, and every single part needs to be taken and cleaned in this parts washer here. He's using Varsol to clean these parts actually with a paintbrush there. And you can see everything's coming out really nice. It's looking nice and clean, a lot more clean than it was when I originally brought him the stuff. Jeff will continue with the crankshaft. That needs to be cleaned thoroughly. The bearings need to be checked, as you can see him doing here. And the cages within the bearings all need to be cleaned. Again, using the Varsol there in the parts washer. Then everything just needs to be wiped down, and the reassembly of the gears will start. You can see him just cleaning everything thoroughly and then inspecting everything again as he just puts it back together. Parts are looking nice and shiny. You can see the transmission here, and the crankshaft here is just going through, thoroughly cleaning the cages and the bearings on the crankshaft. Moving on to the crankcases, Jeff takes a razor blade to the edges here. What he's doing here is just working out the little burrs. And actually you can see him tip the razor blade here on the edge, and he just kind of chamfers it a little bit. Basically all he's doing is getting rid of that sharp edge along the sides of the crankcases. Jeff continues on just cleaning all the gunk and the old sealant from the cases. This is going to give the liquid sealant the best chance of mating these two surfaces together. So you really want to take your time, make sure you clean off all the burrs, the old sealant. You want to make sure it's just very clean. Jeff will take the compressed air gun and just blow out all the debris he cleaned off from the edges. Jeff thoroughly inspects all the oil galleries to make sure there's no debris clogging any holes, any vital passageways for the oil to move through. We move on to the bottom case. You want to do the exact same thing, kind of rubbing it down with a little Varsol here, and just do the same thing with your razor blade. Chamfer it a little bit and just clean up the mating surfaces as best you can. Then Jeff removes the tack welds that are holding the windage plate in place with a chisel and a hammer. You basically just hammer those right off because we want to get in to remove this windage plate. He'll use a hand impact driver to aid him in removing the screws that are holding that in place. Those are really tricky to get off, so you definitely want to make sure you use this impact driver to really just remove that without stripping in the bolts. And here comes the big reveal of the windage plate. Let's see what's behind there. Let's see how good of a job I did cleaning that. Ooh. Not too good of a job at all. Look at that windage plate, that's disgusting. You can clearly see the oil buildup and the debris at the bottom of the engine here that I was unable to get to. I thought I did a pretty good job with it, but the Pine Sol I used was not very effective in breaking that up. I used Varsol to clean out the bottom of the case, and here you can see the final result. I'm feeling a lot better about this. The Soda Blaster did a great job. So what we're doing here, what Jeff's doing here, we're just reinstalling the plate. As you can see, when I've gone ahead and I cleaned all that up, so we're feeling really good about that, aren't we, Jeff? That is Busche approved. God damn it! So we're just gonna install the plate back, the splash guard.
Yeah. So I've put red Loctite on the threads. This is a slightly different fastener, but it has a built-in lock washer on it, which won't be anything but better. They're also for tightening.
I figured they were, but
now, obviously, I'm not applying that much, but when I watch the head of the fastener, I can see it turn about maybe, I don't know, what's that, 15 degrees or something.
Yeah.
And which is good, because that means that it's definitely home. Here, let's see. Yeah, that'll work good.
Perfect. Beautiful. So it's time to unwrap the timing chain. This is an endless timing chain, and it's right out of the package. When it comes in a new package, it usually is coated in some kind of preservative, because I guess they don't really know how long it's going to be in that package. So Jeff takes special care to wipe that off, because that's going to prevent the chain from being coated in the oil. And what we want to do is get this soaking in some motor oil that you're going to use in the engine, because that's really going to help get it into the seals of the chain. We're not really too worried about the outside of the chain, just getting the seals inside the chain nice and soaked with that oil. Now it's time to get the assembly lube into the places where the crankshaft that it's going to have the most movement. This is going to help it on startup, so you really want to get into the bearings, into any moving parts within the crankshaft here. You can see them really working it into the spaces, the little tiny spaces in between the crankshaft there. So we're getting ready to put the shift drum in, and with the gears, the transmission here, and just double checking again. This is a little checklist. There are two bearing retainers here, and you have your locking pins here. So these two bearing retainers will go into each side of where the transmission goes, and then you have the two lock pins here. There's two small ones. One goes here, one goes here, and then the larger one goes up here. So definitely double check that. So I have the large one here, the two small ones here, and then my two bearing retainers. And also on my bottom case, I made sure that the rubber ball's in the oil passage that's blocking, so that's all good. So we're gonna get ready and do this. Also, this is your, what was this mechanism called, Jeff? Sorry.
Okay, this is your neutral detent ball thingy. I can't,
Yeah, I know.
I can't remember the exact name, but
mechanism.
its function is that, okay, the shift drum goes in here like this, and this detent here actually goes straight up to the top of the motor.
Yep.
And then the whole function of this is that there's the bolt, the spring, and the ball, and it actually sits in that detent when you're in neutral. Once you get the gear shift drum and the shift forks installed into the engine, then you want to put this in through the top right away and put the shift drum in neutral. Right. And that way, when you drop the transmission shafts into this, when you move the gear around to line it up with the shift forks, the transmission would automatically be in neutral that way, and it'll stay there unless you physically move it into first or second or whatever.
And there you go. It's a good tip.
So that's a little
way
bit
better. Yeah, just.
I don't know if you knew this or not, but back in the day when this old girl was made, they didn't chrome fasteners, and they weren't made out of stainless steel. So they're just plain steel, and they're zinc coated. So when you do that, you have to be gentle. Like, the idea is not to remove anything, it's just to slightly buff up the zinc chrome, or the zinc coating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only thing that keeps it from rusting
when
it's out in the weather. So you can see by throwing it on the wire brush, I've made it a little bit prettier. Like you could see the shine on it.
It's pretty good.
So that looks quite a bit better.
Yeah, a lot better. Wow.
And actually the autosol I've found works pretty good at, protecting that little
surface,
polished
yeah.
look. And so.
Look at that. It's much nicer than it was. Thank you, Jeff.
And then, just in case
Flatten
you
it
wondered
up.
why they put those on vices, when this is a lock tab, and basically it gets bent up.
Right.
So that when, just to show your fan, so when you bend that tab up, it means this can never back right out, and it's hooked on a part of the
engine,
engine case. But before, if you're going to reuse them, which if they're in relatively good shape like this, there's no problem reusing them. However, you have to reset
Flatten
them.
it out.
Oops, not sure your tablet works. So there you go, good as new. Got 426003 shift
drum seal. Okay, so we're just going through all the seals here, just figuring out.
Yeah.
That's a good step. You want to put your seals in before you start assembling this stuff. So all new seals here. This is making me sleep better at night also. So we're just going to install this stuff.
And I always fill the seal lips with grease when I install them. And I found that actually seems to really give them a lot of life. Right? Because you've basically got a bit of grease caught between the two seal lips, and it keeps them moist.
Just knocking in this beautiful seal here.
Now, what I'm using to install it, this is actually a bearing installer.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to go inside the inside race of the bearing and then press it in like that. But I have it. They're all different size ends, and they make a great little seal install.
No, yeah, for sure. That was perfect.
And it's pretty important that you get something like this that's the same size as the outside of the seal when you're installing it. Otherwise, you mushroom the edges over, and then it's not good.
Looks good, man. Nice new seal. Beautiful. Oh, just on the inner wall there.
And let's make sure you got some on there. Now. Alright, so now these have to go in the right order and the right way. As we put this in.
Making sure the smaller shift fork goes in the middle. The two larger ones will be on the outsides.
Alright, so everything's moving smooth, it turns.
So he's just making sure that the neutral detent is pointed north, basically, so we could put that bolt in on the top of the engine there. It sits in there with the ball bearing. I should get out of your way for this. I'm going to switch up to the other camera so I can get a little bit more of a zoom. But you can see him, he's just installing the pins here, but I'll switch cameras and we'll get you a little bit more of a zoom. Alright, so you can see Jeff continuing with the shift cam and shift fork installation. He installs the pins and then uses these clips to hold those in place. And you can see here how those go in. We move from left to right, installing the pins and the shift forks in their correct positions, carefully installing the clips that hold those in. And again, you want to make sure all this stuff is thoroughly coated in the assembly lube. Any moving parts, just give it a nice coat in that assembly lube, and that's just really going to help it on initial startup. Just installing the last clip here, and voila, we have the shift forks installed onto the shift cam. Jeff points the neutral detent in the north position, and we get ready to install the ball bearing with this hollow bolt here.
Yeah, now we're ready to put the transmission shafts in. We've got the shift drum and the shift forks are all installed. We've got the neutral detent engaged so that we know the transmission's in neutral when we install it.
Okay.
And now I've pre-lubricated the bearings on both sides here of both shafts. And I'm just going to put a little bit of lube on the shaft itself for the gear that moves, the shift gears, just so that it has ample lubrication. And this will flow out.
You're just basically covering the parts that are moving.
Yeah, all the sliding parts, just getting some lube on all the shafts and everything so that it's not going to be running dry. Once I put them in, I'll run a little stripe on the gears as well.
Okay.
And obviously the bearings are all lubed up and so on. Alright, so first one I'm going to put in is the main shaft.
Okay.
This is the one that connects to the clutch is mounted on this end of the shaft.
And that's the longer, skinnier one.
Yeah, well the way to tell is that this is the sprocket end of the counter shaft, and then you can, this is what the clutch shaft part looks like.
Okay.
More technical terms there. Okay, so basically this is not hard to do. What you need to do is just line up the gear and make sure that you've got the clip, the locating clip for this bearing, and then
that would be this.
yeah, great.
Right there.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it fits into this groove, and then there's the hole for the locating pin. So I don't know, I just twist it around until the pin drops in like that. There we go. So now you tug each way, you can feel it's positively engaged with all with the pins, and everything is moving smoothly. Now I'm just going to wipe the stuff off the bearing, make sure it's good, and then the that's the right way. Okay, so now the main shaft. Once again, lift up the forks and wiggle it in, get your locating ring there, twist the bearing around until it engages with the pin. There we go. Okay, so I can feel it's in there with the pins, and because we've got it in neutral, the transmission is functioning in neutral.
Cool.
Okay, so now I like to put a little bit of a stripe on the gears themselves here. Okay. This just helps in the initial startup before the oil gets flowing. And,
juicy.
oh yeah,
So
look at
juicy.
That. Nice. Okay, so that is one happy transmission. Now what we've got to do is just shift through the gears and make sure everything's working properly.
Okay.
Because once you bolt the cases together, you can't fix it if it's not.
So your shift drum, one goes here, the shift forks, one goes here, one goes in this little groove, and one goes in this little groove here. So if you need this for reference, you take a screenshot or whatever.
Fifth, fourth. Now you have to turn the transmission gears when you're moving the shift drum, or they won't move, because
exactly, yeah.
what happens is that the engagement dogs on the gear line up, and if it tries to move over, they hit each other. So
right.
by turning the transmission shafts as you're doing this, it will make it.
Basically,
You see, you can actually see right here
too.
as I turn it,
Yeah.
those, see, they're coming apart from each other.
Yeah.
So now it'll go into gear. Yeah, because if you don't turn the tranny shafts, you'll be trying to get it into gear forever. So. All right, so it does definitely shift through all the gears, which is good. And
Happy?
now we should be back in neutral again, theoretically. Oops. Yeah, so just make sure before you button the bottom end on that things haven't jumped out. Alright, so there we go. That's basically all there is to installing the transmission gears. It's not that hard, you just have to be careful and pay attention to the pins. And
and it just looks like such a puzzle. When you look at it initially, it's a confusing amount of gears. It looks like the inside of a clock or something, but yeah, I mean, after you kind of wrap your head around it, it's pretty cool. It's a simple, not super simple, but it's once you get it, it's kind of it's a neat little
absolutely. You push the shifter, it operates a mechanism that turns the shift drum moves the shifter forks, the shift forks move the gears back and forth, and then the power takes a zigzag path through the tranny out to your sprocket, and off you go. But the first thing is you've got to get the cam chain out of its oil bath. It should be nice and totally saturated with oil now. So the whole purpose of bathing it in a bath like this is just to make sure that you've got lots of oil inside the pins and the rollers. The oil on the exterior doesn't really matter. It's more that it soaks into the middle of the chain. So I'll just wipe some of this off so it's not a mess when we're installing it. Alright. So this is an endless chain. There's no link. There's no right or wrong way to put it on. It'll go either way. So it's just a matter of putting it on the sprocket. Okay, so now when we're installing the crank, you have to make sure you put it in the right way. So the tapered end where the alternator or the rotor for the charging system goes, it goes on the starter side of the engine, and then this is the spline shaft for your oil pump and the drive for the clutch. Well, this is the side it drives off is, and don't forget we have the engine upside down, so you know right is left, left is right. So okay, so all you have to worry about is that that's in there, because once you can't put it in once the cases go together. So you just kind of hold it like this. Drop the chain down into the chain valley there, and then keep the rods so that they go there. Okay, and then just try and do it gently so you're not bumping stuff. Okay, so there's pins that locate the bearings because the oil has to flow out of the oil galleries in the case and into the bearings. So first of all, once again, I just spin these around. There's a dowel hole there. We have the dowel in the bore for it, and with a little luck, it'll just drop in. Oh,
I had, when I was putting it in there to just to test it, I had a hard time getting that pin in there. Well, let me just get a close up of that side.
Sorry, yeah, what I'm doing is moving the crank side to side a bit and spinning this, and
so there is a pin right at the bottom of on this side here. There you go. If you could see it right there. So you definitely want to make sure that you have that in there.
Yeah. So just rock it back and forth a little bit. There's no pin on this side because that pin locates the crank right side to side, so it's centered in the case. In order to locate the oil galleries, so the oil feed hole in the bearing to the galleries in the case, the pin has to go in, and make sure you put it into the pin hole, not the oil gallery, because it'll all stop real quick if you do that. Okay, so the pins go there, and then you can see that there's a groove right here, and that's what locates this bearing. So you just, it'll have to wiggle it a little bit to get it to go in there so it lines up properly. There we go. And just make sure it's home all the way and not sticking up, otherwise the cases won't go together properly. There we go. Okay, so now you can see that those are going to get captured, because the next step after we clean it is the main yoke in the middle is going to go on, and those pins will get captured by this to keep them from rotating and make sure the oil galleries are all lined up.
Cool.
Okay, so now we've got the crank in, we've got the bearings located with all locator pins and everything. Now the next thing to go on is the cradle, or the support, bottom support for the two main bearings in the middle of the crank here. And now this thing could actually go either way, but there is a proper and not a proper way. So I just checked the manual to see how it goes, but actually it's fairly obvious. The lower case is the same profile as this, so if we were to put it on backwards, what the problem would be is the case wouldn't go down. Right? You see right here. So now putting it on the correct way, now you can see that there's clearance for the bottom case to go on. And so yeah, when you're putting stuff together, like, you know, just go slow and look at it and try and figure out the logic of it, and use the manual and the parts fiche as a reference for sure. Cool. Okay, so there's nothing special about this. There's no locating pins. It's simply the support for the bearings, and they're located at the top of the case. So now we'll have to torque these bolts, and I always use grease on the threads, because otherwise you can't get an accurate torque reading, because the dry threads will bind on each other. So you always have to lubricate it. You could use the assembly oil, you could use motor oil. I personally just use grease because it's easy to work with and not quite as messy.
And there's no need to Loctite those at all?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah. No, because it's going to be torqued to the correct torque, and that's going to hold it there. It wouldn't hurt if you put Loctite on it, but there's no need. It's not a requirement. We have our bolts greased up so that they don't bind in the threads. So all I'm doing is just bottoming down the bolts here. Make sure that the grease is spread around nice. Now that we've got these installed hand tight, we need to torque them up. So you always have to torque in several stages, and use a pattern. So I'm going to use a cross pattern here. If you were torquing the head on or whatever, you need to follow the torque pattern that's in the manual for that. But here a cross pattern will be fine. So now this torque wrench it's actually at the bottom limit of the wrench for torque settings. So what I'm doing is adjusting it to its lowest setting for my first torquing step, and lock it in place. And then when you're doing torquing bolts, you always want to make sure that the wrench is as close to the bolt as possible, and that you've got it at 90 degrees to it. And so what I'm going to do here is, so what I'm going to do is just slowly, using my cross pattern, tighten up the bolts evenly.
Just to snug?
Well, what I'm doing is just slowly working up to the first stage of torquing it. Now the wrench will go snap when it reaches the torque. Okay, so now I can feel it's probably going to do it now. So, okay, did you hear that click?
Yep.
So what you want to do when you're torquing bolts is, once you get it close to the torque, you want to have a steady, continuous motion until it clicks. That way you get the most accurate torquing. So go like this, like that, and then up here. Okay, now I usually just go back and recheck because sometimes it'll move a little bit more.
Okay.
It's not so bad on really small torques like this because we're talking maybe 16, 14 foot-pounds or something. Okay, so that's the first step. The torque spec is 16 to 17 and a half. So I'm going to set my gauge at 18.
Okay.
Half a foot-pound isn't going to make any difference, and it's, you know, better that you have at least the torque and a wee bit more than not enough. We've gone to the first step. The big thing is you have to work up to the final torque when you're doing it. That way everything gets real happy with each other slowly. Okay, so once again, a smooth motion. Now, you have to be careful because once it clicks, you have to stop because I could pull this down and torque it up to 25 by mistake.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do that. The spec is the spec and you want to go right to it.
Okay. Perfect.
That's
Torque
what you do. The next step is that we'll move on to getting the lower case prepared to drop on and get the case sealant on there and bolt the bottom end together.
Sounds good.
Transmission's still turning. Everything's all nice and lined up.
Well, looks good, man. It's so cool to see this come together. So we got everything together here. Jeff's doing a great job, and I hope you guys are learning a lot because I sure am. So it looks spectacular. I can't even believe how nice it looks. I can't even, like, it looks brand new. Like it came out of the factory. So it's looking cool, and now we're just gonna, like Jeff said, we're gonna do the bottom cases, prepare that, and get it ready to mate onto and seal these cases up. Before we can continue to seal up these cases, we need to install the kickstart mechanism. Jeff just installs a seal for that right here on the side of the engine. We go through and just take some of the parts for the kickstarter mechanism and just run them over the wire brush a little bit to clean up any surface rust or anything, any debris or anything like that, just to make it look a little nicer. The cleaner the parts that go into the engine, the happier your engine's going to be. Here you can see us laying out all the parts for the kickstart mechanism. So when we need to grab something, it's easily accessible. Now we're just applying assembly lube to all the moving parts. Jeff just sort of explains here the wear points of the Kickstarter spindle. We apply the circlip at the end of the mechanism, and you definitely want to make sure that's sitting inside its little groove there. Jeff takes his snap ring pliers and he just moves it in that groove. There's a specific groove for that snap ring, and you want to make sure that's sitting in there properly. We're just taking a little bit of Varsol to the mating surface of the case and just making sure everything is very clean. Here you can see Jeff laying out all the new bolts and making sure that they're easily accessible when he goes to put them into the case halves. It's a good idea to be organized when you're working, and this will save you by making any mistakes.
And once again, I'm just liberally adding some grease to the lips of the seal.
Cool.
It helps it last longer. Okay, so that just literally sits.
Right in there.
Put my eyes on. Sits in there. You've got to try and make sure that it's nice and square.
Yeah.
In there. Okay, so that's good right there.
Now I saw a guy use the case sealer on that as well. Do you recommend that or no?
Nope.
Okay.
You don't put case sealer on the outside of the seals.
Okay.
They're a little bit larger than the diameter of the inside diameter of the bore, so when you torque the whole case together, it crushes this slightly. Right. And holds it firmly, whereas if you put case sealant on there, I'm not sure that it wouldn't sort of act like a lubricant. Right. And you know, and you did
when you added grease, you just did it to the lips, not the outside.
Yeah, I actually, you probably saw me actually wiped it off in this particular case. When I'm installing seals into a bore, I don't actually worry too much about wiping anything that got on the outside off, because it makes it go into the bore a little easier. But in this case here, I want to try and keep it dry on the outside. And I'll do the same thing now with the countershaft seal. Once again, there. And then you might have to lift the transmission shaft up slightly and then just kind of wiggle the seal on so you don't twist the lip or anything, and then slide her in there.
Cool.
Okay, so check, double check. We've got our kickstart mechanism in place, all of that stuff. The seal cleaned up.
Again, I'm going to just point it out, this ball in here, this little rubber ball stops, that is very important for oil flow, so you make sure that's in there.
Okay, so now I'm going to apply the case sealer. We know everything's all ready to go there, and so this is the stuff to use right here. Well, let's put it this way, this is what I've always used, and I've never had any problem with it. I think that's the best stuff to use. So there's nothing to do in this really. You don't want to put too much on, but you want to get a nice little layer going. So basically I just use my finger to do this, and basically just start off by, now you want to keep it off of these surfaces here, but you definitely want to get a nice juicy little layer on there. And this is, I find this is just the easiest way to do it. Use your finger. Yeah, well, one of the reasons why I use this particular stuff as opposed to more silicone-based sealers and so on is that when this squeezes out on the inside of the case, after about a day, it hardens to the case and it can't come back off. Whereas I find that the other kinds of silicone-based goops and stuff don't harden stuck to the inside, and they can fall off and get caught in the oil system. So once again, you don't want to put too much on, but you want to make sure you've got a nice little layer on there. And around the dowel pins, it's important to make sure you get it on all sides. You only put the case sealant on one side, so the side that you're installing, because it would be really hard to get it in places like this on this side, right?
Right.
So yeah, you only need to get it on one side. So just make sure you get a nice even coating like this, and that's all you need.
Got all the pins in.
Yep, we are good. Okay, so
Seals are in.
here goes. So now we'll flip her upside down. Now, you might have to move the transmission a bit to get the kickstart gear to align.
Okay.
Okay, so now when I look at the case split, I can see that it's basically just sitting together. There's no big gap anywhere from something holding it apart, because you don't want to do that. And then just double check your seal again to make sure that it's nice and square in there. That's nice. Okay, now you don't have to like hurry. That's another reason why I use this stuff, is because it does take a while to set up. So the most important thing is just getting the cases together fairly quickly once you get it on there, and then now we can start installing fasteners. So what I'm going to do is install them all where they go,
Exactly.
and then take each one out, put a bit of grease on, and go like that. So that way, before I know I'm heading in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And there's one hiding there. And right there and right there. Now that I've verified that all the fasteners are basically the same distance out, to double check to make sure you've got the right fastener in the right place. I mean, obviously, if it was like that, there's something wrong.
There's something awry.
Yeah. And the manual also shows you where they all go and stuff. So I use Bel-Ray waterproof grease for all this kind of thing, but the instructions say you should use anti-seize, so we'll go with their instructions because they're the manufacturer. And just put some anti-seize on there.
Okay, so we're just going to get a proper torque on these bolts, right, Jeff?
Alright, so what I'm going to do first of all is just tighten everything down finger tight to get the case sealant squished in there a little bit so we don't leave it too long. So I'm just looking at the case split to make sure that it's all right together. If there was something binding, then it would be holding it apart, and it's pretty obvious there isn't. We'll give the crank a little bit of a move, make sure it's still turning. Transmission's still turning okay. Kickstart mechanism is alright. Okay, good. So when you look in the factory manual, it gives you a torque sequence. Okay, so they say to tighten these two first, and then this one, and then that one, and then we'll just keep going around. So I've hand tightened these, and we'll just once again slowly bring it up to the final torque. Okay, and then this one. Alright, so all of them have now been sort of snugged up almost to the torque, so now we'll...
And we're doing these ones at 10.7 or 11
Yeah.
foot poundage. And he is working in a specific pattern. Make sure you check your manual and make sure you follow that pattern.
That, sir, is a bottom end. Nice, very nice.
Very nice, Jeffrey. Very
Okay.
nice.
Everything still turns.
Everything is good. He's just double checking, make sure everything's
Kickstart
smooth.
mechanism. If you go to the other side, you'll be able to see the kickstart mechanism actually engage and turn the transmission. See, when I duplicate the kickstart motion, you can see it's
Oh yeah.
turning the transmission. So
That's a
that pretty
good
much
sign.
verifies everything's at home and happy.
Everything's torqued and in place, and it's looking just fantastic, guys. I'm really just over the moon right now. I'm just going crazy. This looks beautiful. It's beautiful bottom end here, and it's looking really nice. Jeff did a great job, man. Wow.
All right,
Nice
well, let's
little
flip
run.
it over.
Yeah.
Oh, yep, it weighs a little bit more now. Okay, and then, so we got our cam chain here. And so you can maybe show the split so you can see how it's just slightly squeezed out. When you're putting on the case sealant, you don't want too much because you don't want it to squeeze out and ooze all over the place.
Right.
Because it's doing the same thing on the inside of the case, and you want to try and keep as much from flowing inside as possible.
Cool.
But in a day, that will set up to a semi-hard, rubbery consistency and sticks like glue to everything it's on, so it's not going to fall off inside the engine and get caught in the oil pickup screen or anything like that.
It's really amazing to see this thing actually start to become an engine again instead of just a bunch of pieces in my garage. So this is very fulfilling right now for me to look at. So I'm very impressed. Everything's going really well. So happy engine.
So now that that's tightened up, we can crimp the lock tab over,
Yeah. Go ahead, man.
which is done carefully so we don't scratch the beautiful paint, just like that. And so now that cannot move until we remove it for the next rebuild.
Very cool.
This actually does have two case bolts that go in the top. They were just hiding. And so we'll put some NTCs on there.
Ready.
There we go. Okay. Alright, there. That is all the case bolts installed.
Hey guys, so I think that's as far as we're going to take it today. You can see the engine behind me on the bench. It looks amazing. Jeff has done an amazing job. I am like over the moon right now. It looks so cool. It's finally nice to see the engine come together, and I'm just really excited. It looks so cool. I've been learning so much at Jeff's shop today, and we'll be back with another episode. We still have to do the top end, so we're working on doing the top end. It's just taking a little more time than we thought, but I think that's going to wrap it up for today. We've have a lot of information that in this video. Hopefully it helps you guys out. Don't forget to click the subscribe. We still got a lot more to do on the bike, a lot more to come up, and the top end's coming up also. So click like, click subscribe, guys, and check out Jeff's shop. There'll be more to come with Jeff. He's still going to help me out with the engine and possibly other parts of the project. So we're going to button this engine up. I'm going to come back next week and we'll shoot another episode, but it's been awesome so far. So here's Jeff here, and I just want to say thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure, coming to your shop. I've been learning so much. I think people are really going to appreciate, all the stuff Jeff's been taking his time to show us. So thank you, Jeff, man. You've done an amazing job so far, and we'll be back with another episode. We're still going to do the top end?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, no, and I've been really enjoying it as well.
Cool, yeah.
You're a great guy to work with, and it's good display of my shop. So
Absolutely.
yeah, see you next weekend.
Okay, guys, we'll be back with another episode, and we'll get this top end all sewn up. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to come back because we still got a lot more to do. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Wrenching it up, gonna wrench it up. Yeah. Wrenchity-roo, wrench-roo.